I'm going to say this again. So listen up, alright? I'm going to use your card for a family trip, huh? We'll be gone for a while, so take care of the house. Shocked by Steve's words, I searched through my wallet. Though I was sure my gold card was there, it was nowhere to be found. I couldn't help but laugh. Hey, that card's expired, isn't it? Can you even still use it? As I said this with a hint of amusement, Steve raised his voice in surprise. What did you say? He went on to say something more, but I ignored him and hung up the phone. More than anything, I suddenly felt relieved at the thought of having some time to myself. I was only concerned about how Steve and the others would look when they returned and how their trip went. Imagining Steve panicking right now brought a surge of laughter. At this moment, none of us could have imagined how this family trip would change the course of our lives. My name is Catherine Miller. I work full-time at a bank. I may not be particularly good at my job, but I work hard, and currently I am a supervisor leading my subordinates. I have seriously strived to balance family and work. In the banking industry, retirement age is set at 55. Currently, I am 51. With only a little time left, my goal is to work until retirement. All my colleagues and friendly juniors, except for me, have retired upon getting married. At that time, it was common to quit your job when you got married. This was because bank jobs were seen as special, and the burden on mothers with children was widely recognized as being heavy. There were times when I would come home late at night. Moreover, I had to leave for work early in the morning, and the environment for raising children was not conducive. Even if my child fell ill, I couldn't respond immediately. In situations where I absolutely had to intervene, I would apologize profusely to my grudging colleagues and superiors and head home. There were many challenges and unpleasant experiences, but I couldn't quit my job. The reason was my husband, Steve. I met Steve through a friend. At that time, I was a 22-year-old new bank employee, not yet accustomed to the job and exhausted every day. Steve worked at a local factory and his earnest work ethic seemed very cool. Moreover, he had the capacity to cheer me up and taught me the mindset needed as a working adult, treating me kindly. It's important to show respect to those older than you. Seniors and superiors are role models, and the same goes for family. I always keep that in mind. Inspired by Steve's words, I started to take advice from my seniors and superiors seriously. As a result, I became a beloved figure among those around me, and I felt grateful to Steve. When I had become a bit more accustomed to the job, we got married. Honestly, I hesitated about quitting, but at that time, it was a given that a wife would quit her job upon marriage. It might not have been necessary, but it was a difficult time for women to continue working after marriage, so I was prepared to quit. However, Steve had a different view. What? Quitting the bank would be such a waste. Shouldn't I quit my job instead? What? Because your salary is higher. It makes more sense for the one with the higher income to keep working, right? He had a point. However, Steve's bosses and family opposed the idea of his becoming a stay-at-home dad. At the time, it was common for the wife to stay at home after marriage, not just in banking but in other fields as well. People who have nothing to do with this shouldn't butt in. Though Steve claimed to hold respect for elders in high regard, in reality, He rarely listened to advice from parents or seniors, preferring to push through with his own ideas. He was adamant about becoming a stay-at-home husband and quit his job immediately after the wedding ended. As a result, I couldn't quit my job. It's not that I disliked work, but I couldn't comprehend Steve's actions. Nonetheless, I had to accept the reality of living in this situation and started our married life with a bit of dissatisfaction and anxiety. Despite such a marriage, things went smoothly until we had children. Steve took care of the household and waited for me to come home late. Hence, I had no worry about having children. Then our first son, Max, was born, followed by our daughter, Natalia, the next year. While I was on maternity and prenatal leave, Steve earned our living with daily jobs. When I returned to work, we went back to our original lifestyle. Steve as a full-time household husband, and me supporting the household financially. We've cooperated and overcome difficult situations together. Naturally, I thought we would continue to live the same way. However, Steve started neglecting household chores while complaining about the difficulties of child rearing. Of course, I understand that child rearing is tough. I told him it's okay to do what he can without pushing himself too hard. But Steve began to vent his frustrations on me, exhausted from work every day. You are lucky to be able to talk with someone who understands our language. I'd be more relaxed working outside than this. That comment made me angry. Who was it that quit his job on his own accord? Deciding to have children was a mutual decision. Yet, Steve's words made it sound as if I was selfishly choosing to work. Then, you should work. What are you talking about? It's impossible to find a job that pays better than a bank employee. Are you kidding me? Steve refused to work, despite my suggestion, and complained as if it was his right. I believe that marriage requires mutual appreciation and respect. I am always grateful to Steve for diligently supporting us with childcare and household chores daily. However, I felt little appreciation from Steve for my work. In the midst of this, our children started attending kindergarten. But as they were not accustomed to group settings, they often caught colds, and just like others, our children fell ill at times. As he wasn't working, I naturally expected Steve, who was a stay-at-home dad, to take care of the children's health. However, that expectation was quickly betrayed. The kindergarten called, and it seems like Natalia has a fever. Can you go pick her up? I was surprised to receive this call at work. What? Why don't you go pick her up? Well, if I go, they'll think I'm not working, right? What are you saying? So, please, can you go pick her up? I was so taken aback that I was speechless with my mouth agape. I'm really asking you, please. Wait, what are you saying all of a sudden? But without listening to me, Steve quickly hung up the phone. I couldn't understand his behavior, caring about such things after not working since we got married. I tried to contact Steve several times afterward, but I couldn't get through. Although I couldn't comprehend his actions, prioritizing Natalia's health, I reluctantly asked my supervisor for permission to leave early to rush to the kindergarten. My boss looked displeased, but I begged desperately and hurried to the kindergarten. I'm sorry for being late. When I arrived at the kindergarten, running, Natalia's teacher welcomed us. It's okay. It seems like Natalia's fever has gone down a bit. It was over 100 Fahrenheit earlier, but still, please make sure she rests well. Understood. Thank you. I apologize for the inconvenience. I apologized deeply to the teacher while holding Natasha's hand. Will Halford come as usual to pick us, Max? Yes, that's right. I need to take Natalia to the hospital, so could you please take care of him while I'm away? Yes, that's fine. It will be a relief for the mother, right? The father will come to pick her up after work. Although I involuntarily exclaimed, "What?" when I heard the teacher's words. It seemed that the teacher did not hear me. Well then, Natalia, take your time to rest. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Despite the teacher's warning words, I got into the car with Natalia and headed to the hospital. The doctor told us it was just a cold. When we got home, Steve had come home early and without showing any concern for me or Natalia, he asked, "Welcome back. Should I go pick up Max?" Yes, I'll take care of Natalia, so can you go pick him up? Since I'm going out, Max and I will have dinner outside. You should just give Natalia some porridge. It would be a problem if Natalia's cold spread to me or Max. After saying this, Steve began to prepare to go out, and I was very surprised by his unbelievable behavior. Despite being tired from working since morning, leaving work early, worrying about Natalia, and taking her to the hospital, Steve was planning to go out without any concern. I was disappointed by his attitude and felt as though I had no allies, but I knew that I had to be Natalia's ally. With that thought, I diligently cared for Natalia as her fever rose again at night. And from then on, it became my role to pick up the children whenever they were unwell. Steve would always say, "I can go in the morning or afternoon. I can say I'm on my way home from work in the evening." Because of this, I had to use my paid leave every time one of the children fell ill. I no longer had any paid leave left for attending their school events. I was truly frustrated that Steve did not understand my feelings. But I could not voice this because I thought the children might blame themselves, so I kept silent and endured. Gradually, Steve stopped doing household chores. While he did prepare meals, it was usually just ready-made dishes from the supermarket, and he hardly ever cooked. Despite claiming that raising children was difficult, it was always me who dealt with the kids when they were unwell. As the children grew older, the workload of child rearing decreased. But Steve continued to claim that he was contributing to child rearing. I no longer had the energy to argue. When the children reached middle school, Steve began to dine out frequently. He joked, "Max eats a lot. The food we had at home isn't enough," using our son as an excuse. If he had put in the effort to cook at home, there would have been no problem, but he did not. On the other hand, once Natalia entered high school, she began to cook meals for the both of us. She told me the reason she preferred not to eat out. "You know, eating out all the time might make me gain weight. Dad and brother seem to want to eat out, though." But I knew she was also considering my feelings. I wondered how many years it had been since I could enjoy a home-cooked meal amid my busy work schedule. I always ate Natalia's cooking with gratitude. Years later, the children graduated from university, found jobs, and even got married. Max's wife, Camelia, was a very calm and beautiful person. Max was smitten with her, and Steve liked her very much as well. Steve would say, "Unlike you and Natalia, Camelia is really beautiful, huh? I'm really envious of Max for getting such a good wife." Both Natalia and I were put off by his attitude. Meanwhile, Natalia's husband was a wonderful person, but Steve never praised him. And so I ended up living with Steve again. I was still actively working, and Steve was not at an age that could be considered very old. I thought about asking Steve to help with household chores now that child rearing was done, but he had slacked off for so long that he couldn't suddenly start. In the end, I balanced work and household chores, continuing to support Steve. Although my dissatisfaction was mounting, I made an effort to avoid any outbursts. Then, one day, during work, my smartphone rang. Steve knew I couldn't use my phone at work, yet he called. After work, when I realized it was Steve, I called back worriedly. "Is something wrong?" It seemed that someone was outside, as I could hear a familiar chime sound coming from there. Steve said excitedly, "Oh good, the call connected. I've arrived in Cancun." "Huh? Cancun? What are you talking about?" "My family vacation. That's why I borrowed a card." Steve seemed in high spirits, but as usual, his words were not enough to understand what he was talking about. I was confused. "Wait a minute, can you explain a bit more? What do you mean by card and Cancun?" However, Steve mockingly laughed at me and said, "Are you stupid? I'll say it again, so listen carefully. I'm going to use your card for a family trip with Max and his wife. Don't expect me home for a while." I finally understood that the chime I heard was the sound of the airport announcement. It was clear that Steve's words were true, but it was hard for me to accept. "This is too sudden. If you were going, you should have told me earlier." "It wouldn't make any differences if I told you. Anyway, take care." "Did you say you borrowed my card?" "Yeah, I borrowed it from your wallet this morning. You'll be going to work today and tomorrow, so you won't be using it," I thought. I was shocked by Steve's words and checked my wallet. Indeed, my gold card, which should have been there, was missing. Upon confirming this, I couldn't help but laugh. "Are you talking about the gold card? You took that one?" Steve spoke to me in a calm voice despite my laughter. "Yeah? Is there a problem?" "You did bring other money or cards with you, right?" "Of course not. You, the breadwinner, paying for the family trip shouldn't be a problem, right?" Steve said arrogantly. It seemed that Steve was not concerned about using my card at all and was completely comfortable with the idea. "You intend to pay with my gold card?" "Of course." "Oh, but you know, that card's expired. I wonder if you can still use it." When I said this cheerfully, Steve exclaimed in surprise, "What? Why didn't you check properly?" "Silly, aren't you?" "Well, I'm looking forward to the souvenir." "Hey, wait!" I ignored Steve's word and hung up the phone. Although going on a trip is not bad, why would he take someone else's card without permission? Despite my astonishment, I started to prepare to go home. So I'm on my own for a while starting today. Usually, the thought of Steve being at home would dampen my spirits, but today the house was empty. For the first time in decades, I felt a sense of freedom. That night, I ordered sushi delivery and invited my daughter and her husband, who live nearby. "Mom, what happened? By the way, where's Dad?" as Natalia asked. I laughed and told them about how Steve had gone on a family trip with Max and his wife. Actually, he went on a family trip with Max and his wife, and he even took my card without asking. He took it without asking? That's unbelievable. Natalia expressed her anger. She also seemed unable to understand why I was laughing. Mom, it's okay to be angrier. Natalia looked at me with displeasure, but I couldn't help feeling excited about what kind of faces Steve and the others would have when they returned. Natalia and her husband didn't seem to quite understand my attitude. It was only after a call from Steve that Natalia and her husband understood what I meant. I had tried to call Steve back after that incident, but he had ignored my calls until now, finally deciding to call me. Look, it's a call from Steve. What's going on? I gestured with my eyes to Natalia and her husband and answered the phone. As I suspected, Steve was in quite a predicament. I finally got through. Why didn't you tell me? Because of that, I've been in a real mess. He seemed to have called me several times. Since I hadn't looked at my smartphone at all after receiving the sushi, Steve was upset that I hadn't noticed his calls. I bet. I responded lightly. I bet? Don't talk like it's none of your business. I could easily imagine Steve turning red with anger. So, how are you managing with money and food? I asked because I was concerned. Steve stumbled over his words. It seemed he was trying to say something, but I couldn't hear him clearly. Huh? I can't understand what you're saying. Camilla has been paying with her card instead, but I feel guilty for having her provide 3 meals a day. So I'm planning to eat microwave food every night. He confessed that he had put his pride aside and had Camilla pay with her card. Steve's voice reached Natalia and her husband, and they were also taken aback. Is that so? Well, please give my regards to Camilla. Max had been lying on my card, and it seemed he had left his own behind, but it was a bit of a relief that Camilla had her card. Considering the current exchange rates, it might be difficult, but they will manage somehow. Imagining Steve and Max apologizing to Camilla, I burst out laughing. After hanging up the phone, Natalia asked me, Mom, what's going on? Actually, my card expired. I have a new one, but I hardly use it, so I just left it as is. What? Dad went on a trip with an expired card. At Natalia's words, her husband began to laugh uncontrollably. I felt the laughter welling up again. And then Natalia was also laughing. It was truly a delightful and fun night, enjoying delicious sushi. With smiles and laughter filling the air, I felt happy. If Dad's going to be away from home for a while, and you'll be alone, Mom, why don't you have dinner with us? Really? Yes, please do. Natalia's husband also said with a smile. I took them up on their offer and spent some enjoyable days. Then, on Saturday, I got a message from Steve. It was my day off, and it seemed that Steve and the others had finally returned home that day. It was a pity that the fun days were over. Steve instructed me to prepare some food as his eldest son and his wife would be coming over. With a sigh, yet mindful of the trouble we caused Camilla, I proceeded to prepare the meal with gratitude. Welcome back! When the three of them arrived home, Steve and Max had somber faces, and Camilla seemed somewhat displeased. Confused by their appearances, as they didn't look like they had just returned from a trip. I first urged them to come inside. However, Max started the conversation with a complaint directed at me. It's really irresponsible to keep an expired card in your wallet. Because of that, we had a terrible time. Excuse me? I was shocked to find myself being yelled at by Max for some reason. Furthermore, Steve also chimed in. To think you can't even manage your own card properly. Maybe as a full-time household husband, I've been too lenient. That's right, Dad. There's no benefit in this. Why don't you just divorce? Maybe you're right, Max. Well, I might forgive her if Catherine apologizes. I was stunned by their selfish remarks. It deeply saddened me to realize they lacked so much understanding. Yet, I knew getting angry was pointless. While I searched for words, something surprising happened. Camilla, Max's wife, spoke up. Camilla exclaimed, What? What are you talking about? Camilla sternly addressed Steve and Max. What? I have to make sure Mom understands too. It must have been hard for you as well. I can't believe you're such a person. We were all shocked by the roughness in her voice, as we had never heard her like this before. Unintentionally, we all looked at her. Then Camilla turned to me and apologized. I'm truly sorry. What's wrong? I can't believe I almost used your cards without saying anything and left you behind thinking you joined a family trip I had no idea about. I'm sorry for leaving you along with these two. Camilla? Camilla's apology was unexpected. She didn't know anything about it. I realized that the trip, which she thought would include caring for her father-in-law as well, must have been tough for her. It's not your fault, Camilla. Look up. I realized that this pleased face she had when we arrived home was directed towards these two. There's one more thing I'm sorry for. What is it? I don't want to be with Max anymore, knowing he could do such things. Max turned pale at her words. What? Wait, what do you mean? I'm sorry, I want a divorce. There was no reason to object to her reasoning. I believed Camilla deserved someone far better because she was such a wonderful person. It's okay. It's your life that's important. That was all I could say. Both Steve and Max's face turned pale, with Max collapsing to the ground. But I couldn't bring myself to side with Max. After that, Camilla and Max's divorce was settled. Max blamed me and Steve for the divorce. Later, Max returned home, quit his job, and wouldn't come out of his room. Meanwhile, my words to Camilla, "It's your life," kept echoing in my mind. I kept questioning if my life was really okay as it was. The accumulating frustrations from the trip, with no apologies from the two, turned into dissatisfaction. Unable to bear it, I eventually brought up divorce to Steve. What? He glared at me, his face turning red, as if to suggest I had lost my mind. Exactly as I said. When you came back from the trip, Max suggested I should get a divorce, right? You said you might forgive me if I apologized. But when I thought about it the other way around, even if you apologized to me, I realized I couldn't forgive you. What are you talking about? Your card was declined, so I have nothing to apologize for. Do you think it's just about the trip? I can't take back my past, but I refuse to let you or Max steal my future. These words came out unexpectedly, but perhaps they were my true feelings. In a fit of anger, Steve yelled, "I can't stand being with such an old hag. I'll divorce you." And so our divorce was smoothly finalized. Since I couldn't live in the house that was handed down from my ex-husband's parents, I decided to start a new life with Natalia and her husband. However, about 3 months after the divorce, Steve came to me. "I'm sorry, please come back. I was out of my mind then. Can't we start over?" It seems Steve finally understood what life would be like without me. Without me, he could not lead the same life as before. It was clear that he was at his wit's end trying to support Max, who had become a recluse all by himself. Who would return? I don't want to lose the happiness I finally obtained. I turned down Steve's offer. He seemed a bit irritated, but Natalia and her husband stood by my side. Then, 6 months later, Natalia's husband was transferred and we were set to move far away. I had resolved to pursue a new happiness and a new life. Fortunately, I was also transferred to the same town, so I could continue my job without quitting. This would mean I'd never see Steve again. He didn't know where we were moving to, and I imagined his life would become even more difficult. A neighbor friend, who I had known for a long time, told me that Steve had started working in a supermarket, stocking shelves. Having not worked for so long, his job options were limited. At first, I felt relieved to hear that Steve had started working, but I was later shocked by the subsequent events. Steve, it turns out, had visited our former apartment multiple times, each time resulting in the police being called. This led to complaints at the supermarket, making it difficult for him to keep his job. It's not surprising that the people wouldn't want to go to a supermarket with someone like that around, as nobody wants to be involved with stalkered or troublesome individuals. Still, I hope that Steve will continue to work positively. Since he never thanked me for working, the only way for him to regain a human sense of appreciation is to experience the hardship of work himself. Meanwhile, Natalia and her husband, having no plans for further transfers, decided to buy a new house. Her husband successfully got a mortgage from the bank, and I am grateful they are willing to let me continue living with them. Furthermore, they are expecting a grandchild next year. I have to pour all my love into my grandchild to make up for what I couldn't give to my children, I said with a laugh. To which Natalia replied somewhat annoyed, "Mommy, we received plenty of love from you. You worked hard, managing both a job and taking care of the house and us. I want to be just like you." Hearing those words, I teared up with joy. We, as a family, continue to respect and appreciate each other, hoping to share many more happy days together.